The music box was resting on the second shelf, between a worn copy of Anne of Green Gables and a stack of old jazz vinyls. Dust coated its painted lid, dulling the delicate swirls of blue and gold. When Harper twisted the winding key, it clicked once, then played a lullaby she hadn't heard since she was 5, a lullaby only her sister Everly used to hum. It was a Thursday afternoon in the fall of 2023 in a second-hand bookstore tucked in a narrow street of Asheville, North Carolina. Harper, now 24, had stopped in to escape the cold drizzle and kill time between university classes. She wasn't looking for anything specific, but the moment she heard that familiar melody, the noise of the store vanished, replaced by a memory that had been dormant for nearly 2 decades. Her sister, Everly March, had vanished without a trace in 2004. She was 12. Harper had been 5. The case had dominated headlines across North Carolina for weeks before receding into silence. One more name in the archive of unsolved disappearances. No leads, no sightings, no remains, nothing. Harper picked up the music box. The bottom was scratched, the felt torn in one corner, but taped to the inside lid, yellowed, fragile, was a name written in cursive. Everly. At the Asheville Police Department, Detective Mark Teller stared at the object in silence. The file on Everly March's case hadn't been opened since 2009. But now it sat in front of him, thick with faded statements and outdated forensic notes. He flipped through the pages, stopping at a scanned photo of the exact music box submitted by Everly's mother as a distinctive item missing from her bedroom. Teller reopened the case the next morning. Everly had disappeared on June 12, 2004. It was a humid Saturday in Charlotte, where the March family lived in a modest 2-story house on the edge of Providence Road. At the time, Everly was described as quiet but bright, a girl with a fascination for astronomy and an obsession with journaling. She'd last been seen leaving the house on foot around 5:15 p.m. to walk 3 blocks to the local library, where she often spent hours reading. She never arrived. There were no signs of struggle at home. Her room was untouched. The only thing missing was the music box. Police canvassed the area extensively. Cadaver dogs were brought in, canals were searched, neighbors interviewed. The family underwent polygraphs, but by the end of the 3rd week, the case had stalled. The only unusual thing, a report from a shopkeeper 2 blocks from the library. He claimed a girl matching Everly's description had come into his convenience store around 5:40 p.m. and bought a bottle of strawberry milk. But the timestamp from the CCTV system didn't match. It showed a girl, possibly Everly, at 4:59 p.m. If true, that meant she never made it to the library and may have turned back. But why? That inconsistency became the first loose thread in a case that had too many. 19 years later, Harper sat with Detective Teller in a quiet room at the precinct. She told him everything she remembered. The melody, the chipped corner, the scratch on the bass. She used to wind it every night before bed, Harper said. She said it helped her sleep. The music box had passed through multiple hands. The bookstore owner remembered buying it from an estate sale in Durham 5 years ago. The estate belonged to a man named Roland Fisk, a retired mechanic who had died of heart failure in 2017. No criminal record, no ties to the March family. His property had been sold off in pieces, furniture, boxes, tools, including a small collection of toys and trinkets stored in a locked cedar chest in his garage. Durham was 140 miles from Charlotte. Detective Teller and his team began reconstructing the timeline of Fisk's last decade, receipts from thrift stores, DMV records, garage sale transactions. Through a subpoena, they accessed Fisk's storage unit records. In a unit rented since 2006, they found what they hadn't expected. Notebooks, 15 small journals, each filled with seemingly mundane notes, grocery lists, gas mileage, But between pages, some entries stood out. 6/12/2004, girl too close to corner, waited 7 mins, changed route. 7/3/2004, she's gone. It's quiet again. No names, no dates of birth, no photos. But the implication was chilling. There had never been any mention of Fisk in the original 2004 investigation. His name did not appear in any neighborhood canvassing. He lived alone, with no listed occupation since retiring from his mechanic job in 2001. One entry, however, shifted the direction of the investigation entirely. Box was hers. Don't want it near me. Left it in the old shop on 5th. That address, tracked through zoning archives, matched an auto repair garage closed since 2009, just 3 blocks from the route Everly was expected to take. When officers secured a warrant to inspect the now abandoned shop, they expected nothing. But inside the decaying building, behind a crumbling wall, in what used to be the office, they found a small, makeshift room, soundproofed, a rusted cot, remnants of child-sized clothing, and a single journal, water-damaged but legible. The final page read, Everly, 12. The forensics team was called in. DNA swabs were taken, items catalogued. What they'd found wasn't a crime scene. It was a vault, sealed, hidden, and untouched for years. But what happened in that room? Who brought her there? And what happened after? As for Harper, she left the precinct holding the music box with both hands. The mechanism still worked. The lullaby still played, but the box had started asking questions no one was ready to answer. The abandoned auto shop on 5th Street was sealed off for nearly 3 days. The forensic team brought in ground-penetrating radar and portable DNA sequencing units. Initial scans showed disturbed subflooring in 2 areas of the office, but no remains were recovered. What they did find, in addition to the rusted cot and clothing fragments, was a child's toothbrush wrapped in a plastic bag, 2 hair clips, and a ripped page from a library book, A Wrinkle in Time. Detective Teller read the page twice. In the corner, faintly written in pencil, was a name, E. March. There was no question now. Everly had been in that room. What no one could determine was how long she stayed, or what happened next. Roland Fisk, the retired mechanic, had lived only 3 miles away during the summer of 2004, but neighbors barely remembered him. He kept to himself, often working late into the night on old engines. Some recalled seeing a camper van parked in his driveway for several months, the kind you could sleep in. It was gone by early 2005. Fisk never mentioned where it went. When Harper saw the photo of the room, the cot, the wall with scratch marks, the hair clips, she didn't speak for several seconds. Then she pointed to the blue butterfly clip in the evidence bag. She got that for her birthday, she said. We fought over it. Meanwhile, cold case analysts began cross-referencing Fisk's known movements between 2003 and 2009. A small breakthrough came when an insurance database showed that Fisk had filed a claim in September 2004 for a minor traffic accident in Graham County, 3 hours west of Charlotte, near the Nantahala National Forest. The damage was minimal. No police report had been filed at the time, but the location was peculiar. The road where it happened, Juniper Ridge, was a seldom-used fire access route that led to an uninhabited stretch of federal land. 2 field agents were sent to the area. What they found near the overgrown service road was an abandoned camper, rusted, stripped of parts, and partially sunken into the soft soil. The VIN matched a vehicle previously registered to Fisk. Inside, the camper was in severe disrepair, but under a warped floorboard, they uncovered a child's backpack. Inside, a small pair of shoes, a cracked plastic compact mirror, and an inhaler, the same prescription Everly had used for her asthma, according to her pediatric records. The FBI was now involved. Back in Asheville, Harper began receiving anonymous letters. The first arrived 5 days after the discovery of the camper. It had no return address. Inside was a folded sheet of notebook paper with 6 words. She sang the song every night. The second came 2 days later. They moved her. 2006. Look west. Handwriting analysis showed the same author. No fingerprints. Postmarked from Denver, Colorado. Detective Teller ordered surveillance on Harper's home and had the envelopes tested for trace chemicals. Nothing useful emerged. Whoever was sending them was careful. A third letter arrived the following week. Ask about the blue ledger. That message triggered something familiar in Harper's mother, who had been reluctant to speak to the media since the case reopened. When pressed, she recalled that Fisk had once serviced their car, years before the disappearance, at a small repair garage near Providence Road. She remembered his name only because Everly had written it in her journal. But the journal, the one she wrote in every night, had gone missing after the investigation started. It had never been entered into evidence. This discrepancy raised a serious question. Was there a deliberate omission in the original case file? Detective Teller reviewed the original 2004 investigative inventory. The journal was listed in a family statement but never logged by police. A retired officer, now in his 70s, admitted during a recent interview that some stuff didn't get processed right. What else was missed? Using the Blue Ledger reference, Teller reopened evidence from Fisk's home, particularly a locked footlocker that had been dismissed early on as holding tax documents. Hidden in a false bottom was a navy blue book with handwriting inside. It wasn't a ledger, it was a journal. The first pages were unremarkable: to-do lists, car part numbers, names of clients. But 11 pages into, the entries changed. They became methodical, clinical. 7-2, subject needs structure. She cries when music stops. Box calms her. 8-8, changed routine. No contact. She won't eat unless I speak first. 9-14, she asked to leave today. Again. 9-29, she no longer uses her name. The final entry. 10-15, transport arranged. Quiet during drive. No resistance. Then nothing. Handwriting analysts confirmed it was Fisk. The dates corresponded to the weeks Everly was presumed missing. Transport to where? Was she alive after that? A warrant was issued for all Fisk's storage units and past P.O. boxes. In a forgotten facility in Knoxville, Tennessee, registered under a pseudonym, the investigators found 2 plastic bins filled with VHS tapes, labeled only by dates. Some were blank, others contained distorted footage. The tapes are now undergoing forensic video analysis. But as of the last update, a third bin was found at the same site, sealed with industrial tape, labeled Property E.M. Inside was a single photo. A girl, around 13, sitting on a wooden bench. The background showed a rocky ridge, possibly the Sierra Nevada. Her hair was longer and she looked thinner, but Harper identified her instantly. It was Everly, and it had been taken 2 years after she vanished. The photo was dated October 2006, 2 years and 4 months after Everly March was last seen. It showed her seated on a bench outside what appeared to be a wooden structure, possibly a ranger station or a cabin. In the background, snow-capped ridges suggested an elevation far above sea level. A thin, handwritten note on the back read, Day 489. Still quiet. FBI analysts used the visible geological formations to narrow down the location. Their estimation, Central Nevada, near the Humboldt-Toyabe National Forest. The ridge behind Everly matched an area known locally as Devil's Crest, a place with few roads and no permanent residences. The photograph triggered renewed search efforts. Aerial mapping was deployed using archived satellite imagery from 2005 and 2006. In a sector roughly 14 miles from the nearest logging road, analysts identified a rectangular footprint in the brush, a structure that no longer existed but once had walls and a roof. Investigators dispatched a recovery team. The clearing, now overgrown, yielded small fragments of burned timber and scattered glass. Beneath a layer of ash and compacted soil, they found a metal floor plate and 2 melted hinges. Next to it, a charred steel desk drawer. Inside the drawer, preserved by the heat and debris, was a spiral notebook. Half its pages were unreadable, but the remaining entries contained disturbing, precise routines. Augustem wakes at 06 Z, remains quiet, no incidents. Rained today. She stayed under tarp. I played the tape. She asked about the other girl. I told her not to speak. The last legible entry was dated November 18th, 2006. No mention of where Everly went next. Back in Asheville, Harper was receiving her 4th anonymous letter. This time, it contained something different, a photograph of a storefront in Reno, Nevada. The image was printed from a low-resolution digital camera, time-stamped only with 2014. In the photo, behind the glass window of a pawn shop, a familiar item, a navy blue backpack with a butterfly keychain, identical to the one Harper had as a child. Identical to Everly's. Agents visited the pawn shop. The owner claimed to have no record of the item, but CCTV footage from 2014, long since erased, was not recoverable. A single receipt, handwritten and water-damaged, confirmed that a blue backpack had been accepted in August of that year. No name listed, cash transaction. The trail had gone cold again. Internally, the FBI began to clash with local law enforcement. Agent Carol Fields, newly assigned to the case, criticized Teller's team for piecemeal analysis and failure to issue alerts earlier. Tensions rose. The press got wind of the conflict, and speculation swelled. Was Everly still alive? Had she escaped and gone into hiding, or was she moved again by someone else? Theories diverged quickly. Some investigators believed Fisk may have handed her off to a second party, a network perhaps, or someone he owed. Others suggested the girl in the photo may not even be Everly, but facial recognition software indicated an 89.3% match. That margin, though not definitive, was enough to push forward. A forensic anthropologist specializing in captivity behavior reviewed the 2006 photo and noted something chilling. Everly's posture, hunched shoulders, feet turned inward, eyes down, matched patterns seen in long-term confinement victims. The details supported one hypothesis: she had been held against her will well beyond 2004. But the most unsettling development came not from the field, but from inside the department. Detective Teller received a sealed envelope with no postage, delivered directly to the precinct. Inside, a printed email thread from 2005 between an unnamed officer and a retired sheriff's deputy. The subject, March Girl. The thread included this line: "We logged the box. She said it played a tune, the one she used to sing in the station. You remember, I told you, don't write it down, just hold it. That thing was not for evidence." The document wasn't in any case file, and the officer listed as recipient, identified only by initials Deepa C, had died in 2011. There was no official record that the music box had ever been logged by evidence control. Teller launched an internal inquiry. Archival records from 2004 were requested. In the chain of custody logs, 7 pages were missing. At the same time, a former crime scene technician contacted the team. Her name, Lauren Pike. She had worked the March case briefly before transferring to Georgia in 2005. She recalled photographing Everly's room and documenting the missing items, including the music box, but was told by a senior officer to omit the box from her inventory. "He told me it was a private family heirloom," she said it didn't matter. That officer, Sergeant Dennis Calhoun, D.C., the same name from the email. When questioned, Calhoun's widow revealed he'd kept a lockbox in their attic, one that she never opened. She gave permission to search it. Inside, notebooks, receipts, and a copy of the March case file, including the 7 missing pages. And in the bottom of the box, a second photo, a different girl, same bench, same background, not Everly. Her name was written on the back, Mira 1998. Mira was not a name listed in any state missing persons registry. The timeline had just expanded. The case was no longer about one girl. Someone had done this before. The photo of the girl named Mira deepened the fracture in the case. It was time-stamped June 1998, 6 years before Everly disappeared. She appeared to be 11 or 12. Same bench, same location, same silent expression. When facial recognition software ran the image, no matches returned in any US database. No Mira matching her likeness had been officially reported missing in that time frame. But one detail connected her back to the broader case, a butterfly keychain clipped to her shoelace, identical to the one Harper and Everly had worn. With growing pressure from federal authorities, the FBI expanded the investigation, now operating under the assumption that Everly March had not been an isolated case, and that Roland Fisk may have played a role in a series of long-term abductions. A forensic linguist was brought in to analyze the writings in the Fisk ledger and notebooks. Her conclusion was unsettling. Patterns across the entries suggested the presence of a second author, a more recent hand, indicated by the tone shift in the later notebooks stored in Tennessee. The inference was clear. Someone else had continued the writings after Fisk's declining health, or possibly even after his death. That suspicion became more tangible when investigators returned to Fisk's storage unit for a secondary sweep. Hidden behind a false panel in a disused shelving unit, they found an unmarked hard drive. It had no casing, no labels, no power supply. After days of forensic reconstruction, its contents were partially recovered. Among the recovered files were audio recordings. A dozen in total, each was labeled by year, the earliest from 2002. Most consisted of background sounds, movement, ambient noise, brief snatches of voices, but one file, dated March 2007, stood out. In it, a voice, distorted but female, recites numbers repeatedly. Then a soft, wavering melody, unmistakable to those who knew the case. It was the lullaby from the music box. Harper identified it instantly. FBI analysts traced the audio's ambient markers, insects, birds, reverberations, and narrowed it down to high-altitude forest between Colorado and Utah. The hunt moved west once again. Meanwhile, the identity of Mira became a second focal point. Private investigative work uncovered an obscure article from 1999, a brief note in a community paper in rural Idaho about a foster home closure. One girl had gone missing from the property 2 weeks prior. No national alert had been filed, and local records had been sealed. The girl's name, Miranda J. Her foster records, though limited, showed she'd been placed in state care at age 9. Her last assigned caseworker died in 2003. No subsequent guardian was ever listed. The pattern was no longer ambiguous. Back in Asheville, Harper made a decision. She returned to the bookstore where she'd found the music box and asked to see their acquisition records from the previous 5 years. In a box labeled 2018 Estate Clearance, she found a receipt marked with the name L. Durand. The estate had been sold in Durham County after the death of Lorraine Durand, a retired nurse, aged 78. Durand had no children, but her property included a cottage in the Blue Ridge foothills. Durand's address was familiar to investigators. In a background check of Fisk's known associates, her name had appeared once as the listed emergency contact on a hospital form in 2006, when Fisk was treated for minor injuries after a fall. Durand and Fisk had known each other. With a warrant, FBI agents searched Durand's cottage. What they discovered confirmed their theory. In the locked cellar beneath the home was a storage space, heavily insulated, soundproofed, with no windows. It was empty, but forensic teams identified hair fibers consistent with 2 unknown females and 1 known match, Everly March. Behind a false wall, they found dozens of cassette tapes, neatly labeled. Most were blank or corrupted. But in one, dated May 2009, a young female voice reads aloud from the secret garden. It ends abruptly when a second voice, older, male, enters the room. It would be the last known audio trace of Everly. The timeline became clear. After her initial disappearance in 2004, Everly was moved at least twice. First to the abandoned auto shop, then likely to Fisk's Nevada site. After 2006, she vanished again, either passed along or hidden more deliberately, possibly under the care of Lorraine Durand. Durand's death in 2018 may have ended the cycle. But no trace of Everly was found after 2010. No evidence she was alive, nor proof she wasn't. The case was reclassified from missing person to disrupted captivity, unresolved disposition. The final file was 644 pages long. Detective Teller closed the report with a memo to the Bureau. Evidence suggests Everly March survived past 2006 and was likely under continued organized confinement. The pattern indicates premeditation and logistics consistent with multi-party abduction and retention. Final whereabouts remain unknown. Today, Harper March keeps the music box sealed in a glass case. She doesn't play it anymore. The last item returned to her from evidence was a page torn from a book. On it, written in pencil, 5 words. Harper, I didn't forget you. It was Everly's handwriting. That page remains the last known message from her. No conclusive remains were ever found. No new suspects formally charged. But inside a locked vault in Washington, the March case remains open, dormant, not closed, just waiting.